I stood in the shadows watching my brother accept an award for my work. The proof was in my pocket. When I reached for my phone, my father grabbed my arm and whispered, "One post, and we'll sue you for the rest of your life." That's when I realized this wasn't a family, it was organized crime. It all started the day I turned 18. Instead of a birthday cake, my father invited me into his office, which smelled of old leather and expensive tobacco. A thick folder of documents lay on the desk. Father smiled that rare, warm smile he usually saved for clients and said this was my ticket to the future. "It's a formality, Jasper," he assured me, tapping the paper with a pen. "Just to officially put you on the family firm's staff and start accruing seniority." I was young, naive, and desperately wanted approval. I had always been in the shadow of my older brother Jeffrey, who shone like a new coin. I signed every page without reading the fine print, trusting my parents implicitly. I didn't know I was signing a death warrant for my freedom. The document contained clauses on the complete transfer of intellectual rights, indentured non-compete terms, and fines exceeding the cost of our house. At that moment, I thought I was becoming a partner. In reality, I was voluntarily putting on shackles, the key to which my father immediately hid in his safe. Jeffrey was waiting outside with a bottle of champagne, celebrating not my birthday, but the acquisition of a free slave. The roles in our team were distributed very quickly and harshly. Jeffrey became the CEO, the face of the company, the man who had lunch with the mayor and shook hands with investors. His job was to look successful and promise the impossible. My place was in the basement, which we proudly called the technical department. There were no windows, the servers hummed, and it smelled of overheated plastic. I spent 16 hours a day there, turning Jeffrey's insane promises into real, safe blueprints. He only came to me when he needed urgent edits or when he couldn't answer a client's technical question. "Jasper, make this work," he would toss a napkin with scribbles onto my desk and leave to play golf. I learned, developed, and mastered the most complex software while he degraded as a professional. But to the outside world, he was the genius. My parents carefully maintained this myth. Every achievement of mine was attributed to him. "Jeffrey has outdone himself again," Mom would tell guests, showing a model I hadn't slept for 3 nights to create. I stayed silent, thinking this was temporary, that I was just gaining experience before my own ascent. The turning point came with the Skyline project. It was an ambitious competition to build a new city library. I poured my soul into this project. I studied the history of the district, the lighting, the wind rose. I created architecture that breathed. It was my best work. When the model was ready, I was so proud my hands were shaking. I printed the presentation and brought it to my father, expecting that this time they would at least take me to the project defense. But in the morning, as the delegation was gathering for City Hall, my father blocked my path at the door. "You're staying, Jasper," he said coldly, adjusting the tie on Jeffrey's neck. "We don't need you embarrassing the investors with your appearance. You look like a geek. Jeffrey will sell this better." I stayed in the empty office. I turned on the defense stream on my monitor and watched my brother, who didn't even know the names of the materials used in the project, claim every single one of my words, every single one of my ideas. He said, "I invented, I decided, my vision." The hall applauded, and I sat in the dark, feeling something inside me die. It wasn't just theft of labor, it was the theft of my identity. Winning the competition brought the firm huge money and fame. My parents threw a grand banquet at the best restaurant in the city. I was invited, but as it turned out, only as an extra. I stood in the corner with a glass of warm soda, watching Jeffrey bathe in the spotlight. Journalists surrounded him in a tight ring. At one point, one of the project's main sponsors, Mr. Thorne, approached me. He politely asked, "Do you work at the firm too, young man?" I had a chance. I opened my mouth to say that I was the lead architect of this project, but then Mom appeared between us. She grabbed my shoulder so hard that her nails dug into my skin through my jacket, and laughed loudly. "Oh, this is our youngest, Jasper. He helps us with computer maintenance and refilling cartridges. You know, someone has to watch the tech while the creators create." She winked at the sponsor, humiliating me with a single phrase. The sponsor lost interest and turned away. I stood there spat upon, humiliated by my own mother, who preferred to portray me as a nobody just so as not to overshadow her favorite's shine. The next day, I decided I had had enough. I went into my father's office with a firm intention to demand justice. Jeffrey was sitting there, leafing through a sports car catalog. I put my hands on the desk and said, "I want my name on the blueprints. I want the position of lead architect and a percentage of the skyline profits." I did all the work. Silence hung in the office. Jeffrey slowly looked up and smirked as if he had heard a funny joke. Father took off his glasses and began wiping them with frightening calm. "Jasper," he began in a patronizing tone, "you think too much of yourself. In business, ideas are cheap. The main things are sales and reputation. Jeffrey sold the project. Jeffrey is the brand. And you are just a technical executor. Your lines on paper are worthless without our surname." I tried to object, but Mom, who entered the office, interrupted me with a scream. "How dare you be jealous of your brother? We gave you a job, a roof over your head, and you act like an ungrateful egoist. Jeffrey's success is the family's success. Know your place." I was crushed. My ambitions were called betrayal. The situation in the office became unbearable. They no longer hid their disdain. Jeffrey stopped saying hello. He just sent me voice messages with orders, often while drunk or at parties. "Hey, bro, the client wants higher columns here, redraw it by morning." His voice sounded while I sat with red eyes at 3 in the morning. My health began to fail. I started having constant migraines, and my back ached from the cheap chair they refused to replace, citing budget cuts, while Jeffrey ordered oak furniture from Italy for himself. I realized that if I stayed here, I would die either physically or mentally. I started playing my own game. I bought encrypted cloud storage, and every night, when the office was empty, I copied the source files of my work there. Drafts, calculations, early sketches, correspondence where Jeffrey asked idiotic questions. I was creating an archive of evidence. I didn't yet know how I would use it, but my instinct for self-preservation told me that one day I would have to prove to the world that I exist. It was my little secret that gave me the strength to get up in the morning. The final straw was the release of the company's new portfolio for the international market. I opened the glossy brochure and flipped to the "Our Team" page. There were photos of Jeffrey, Father, Mom, even the secretary. But I wasn't there. At all. Not even in the footnotes. My projects, which I had worked on for years, were signed with Jeffrey's name or simply "Architectural Team." It was complete erasure. I realized I was being prepared for dismissal or total oblivion. That same evening, I updated my resume, attached the portfolio from my secret cloud, and sent it to Vanguard Architects, our family's main competitors. I knew it was a risk, but I was desperate. The reply came 2 hours later. They invited me for an interview. I took sick leave, put on my only decent suit, which I had bought secretly, and went to them. The director of Vanguard was shocked. He looked at my blueprints and couldn't believe that all these buildings were designed by that guy with the printers. He saw in me the talent my family had tried to bury alive. The interview went better than I could have dreamed. I was offered the position of senior architect, a salary 3 times higher than my current one, and most importantly, credit for my future work. I flew home feeling like a free man for the first time in years. I planned to walk into the house, pack my things, and leave my resignation letter on the table. But when I entered, an ambush awaited me. Only one floor lamp was lit in the living room. Father, Mom, Jeffrey, and our family lawyer, Mr. Stern, with a face like a dried pear, were sitting on the sofa. On the coffee table lay a printed screenshot of my letter to Vanguard. Turns out, Father had installed tracking software on my work laptop, which I had foolishly used to send my resume. The atmosphere was so thick you could cut it with a knife. "Did you decide to betray the family, Jasper?" Father asked quietly. Jeffrey looked at me with undisguised hatred. I tried to explain that I just wanted to grow, but the lawyer raised his hand, calling for silence. The execution was beginning. Mr. Stern opened a folder, the very one I had signed at 18. He put on his glasses and began reading in a monotone voice. According to Clause 14b of your employment contract, any attempts at employment with direct competitors during the term of the contract and for 5 years after its termination are punishable by a fine of $500,000. Furthermore, all works created by you are the exclusive property of the company, and using them in a portfolio for third parties constitutes theft of trade secrets. I felt the ground fall out from under my feet. $500,000. I didn't even have $2,000. If you accept the Vanguard offer, my father said, looking me straight in the eye, "We will file a lawsuit tomorrow morning. We will destroy your reputation. We will accuse you of data theft. You won't just not get the job, you'll go to jail or be paying for the rest of your days." It was the perfect trap. They had anticipated everything. I was a hostage in my own home, bound by a paper I had signed as a child. I was forced to call Vanguard and decline the offer. My voice trembled as I lied to them about family circumstances. They understood. Rumors spread quickly in our city, and no one wanted to get involved with a crazy family and their army of lawyers. My life turned into hell. My parents didn't just keep me working, they tightened the conditions. They claimed my attempt to leave caused moral damage to the family, and now I would work without pay for 6 months to cover the lawyer's fees. I became a serf in the 21st century. I lived hand to mouth, eating instant noodles and walking to save bus fare. Jeffrey enjoyed my pain. He deliberately gave me pointless tasks, repainting walls in a render in 10 different shades of beige, only to choose the first option. Work, slave, his eyes seemed to say. I felt broken. I started thinking there was no way out, that I would forever remain my brother's shadow, an appendage to his success. But anger, cold and calculating, began to build up inside me. The unraveling began when Jeffrey, intoxicated by impunity, took a commission to renovate the old theater. It was a historic building, an architectural monument in a dilapidated state. The mayor wanted to turn it into a shopping center while preserving the facade. Jeffrey promised to do it cheaply and quickly without consulting me. When I received the technical documentation and ran the initial calculations, I was horrified. The building's foundation was rotten. Any intervention Jeffrey planned would lead to the collapse of the load-bearing structures. The building had to be either completely rebuilt, which cost 3 times as much, or not touched at all. I went to my father and placed the calculations on the desk. "We can't build this," I said firmly. "If we start work according to Jeffrey's plan, the roof will collapse. There could be people inside. It's dangerous." Father didn't even look at the numbers. "We need this contract, Jasper. We have a cash gap. We've already spent the advance. You will find a way to make the numbers work." Making the numbers work meant faking engineering calculations. This was no longer just unethical, it was a criminal offense. If I did what they asked and the building collapsed, and it would collapse, I would be the one to blame. My digital signature was on all the blueprints. Jeffrey would be clean, he was just the manager. And I would go to prison for manslaughter or negligence. I tried to get through to them. "Do you realize you're asking me to risk people's lives?" I shouted. Mom replied in an icy tone, "Don't be dramatic. Just tweak the strength coefficients. No one will double-check. You will do this by morning, or we activate the penalty clause and sue you right now. Choose. Either you help the family, or you are an enemy." That night, I sat in front of the monitor looking at the red overload zones in the building model. I faced a choice: become a criminal for a family that hated me, or destroy my life by refusing. Fear paralyzed me, but somewhere deep in my soul, the conscience of an architect awoke. I couldn't kill people. I made my decision at 4 a.m. I didn't fake the calculations. Instead, I did something they didn't expect from me. I used my programming skills. I encrypted all the theater project files, every schematic, every blueprint, every estimate, with a complex 256-bit key that existed only in my head. Then I wiped the source files from the company servers, leaving only the encrypted copies. Without the password, it was just digital garbage. I wrote a resignation letter stating the reason: coercion to commit a criminal offense. I packed my personal belongings into one box: a mug, a photo of my dog, and an old calculator. I placed the office keys on my father's desk. I knew that in the morning, a storm would begin that would sweep away everything in its path. But when I walked out onto the street into the cold pre-dawn rain, for the first time in years, I breathed deeply. I was no longer a slave. I was a fugitive, but a free fugitive. I turned off my phone, threw the SIM card into a trash can, and walked to the first bus. The consequences were catastrophic for them. In the morning, they discovered they couldn't open the files. The deadline for submitting the project to the mayor's office was in 2 days. Jeffrey and father bombarded me with threats through social media, friends, and even the police, accusing me of hacking. They filed that $1 million lawsuit. But they miscalculated. When the mayor's office demanded a report, Jeffrey couldn't show anything. He tried to bluff, but experts quickly realized he was incompetent. The contract was terminated with a scandal. The firm was fined a huge sum for disrupting a government order. Rumors of incompetence and attempted fraud destroyed the family's reputation in a week. Banks demanded loan repayments. They withdrew the lawsuit against me because they simply ran out of money for lawyers. Now I work as a barista in another city, live in a small room, and pay off old debts. I don't practice architecture until the ban expires. But I am happy. I see news about my father's firm's bankruptcy and know. I lost my career, but I kept my soul. And they lost everything. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel, like it, and click on the bell so you don't miss any more stories. See you soon.